Viewer discretion is strongly advised.
The NPFL's Octopus operation took the peacekeepers by surprise, and the advance reached the edge of the city, generating in its wake a string of atrocities and summary executions.
We have heard of these acts in the field on the part of the other side, outright, overt cannibalism, and as you mentioned, brutality. These are issues of war.
The deadly attacks lasted 4 weeks and ECOMOG had no choice but to revert to a conventional enforcement strategy. After urgent calls for reinforcement, the attack was successfully contained and then repelled. The most significant lesson that emerged from the failure of the Octopus operation was that ECOMOG did in reality have the capacity to take on and defeat the warring factions, and in particular the NPFL, in a conventional operation. The ECOWAS and ECOMOG undoubtedly brought a measure of sanity to Liberia, but a stronger intervening organization was needed to take the peace progress to a higher plane. At the height of the conflict, there were 7 different factions fighting for control of Liberia, but most prominent was Charles Taylor's NPFL. Several peace accords were signed in spite of internal wranglings and disagreements among the ECOWAS countries, but none of the peace treaties were honored by the warring factions. Eventually, the United Nations Observer Mission in Liberia got involved in the peacekeeping efforts. Their mandate was to impose a military embargo on the warring factions and to create a buffer zone or otherwise seal Liberia's border to prevent cross-border attacks and importation of arms. All sea and air ports of entry were also to be monitored. However, at the internal level, the arrival of 368 UN peacekeepers did nothing to improve ECOMOG's logistical shortcomings, and tension increased as the numerical inferior United Nations declined to share its resources and equipment with ECOMOG.
Representing ECOMOG, we now send our greetings to our Mrs. Marian Abacha.
Nigeria was the strongest military power in West Africa and the Organization of African Unity. It supplied the majority fighting and logistical assets because no other OAU country was able or willing to do more. After 3 years of enforcing peace in Liberia, the Nigerian economy had taken a significant economic hit. ECOMOG was costing the Nigerian treasury a reported $500,000 every day. In September 1993, the interim government of Ernest Shonkan considered this sacrifice too costly, and asked his defense minister, General Sani Abacha, to prepare to bring home Nigeria's 12,000 troops from Liberia by March 1994.
The interim national government is hereby dissolved. The national and state assemblies are also dissolved.
However, on the 18th of November 1993, General Sani Abacha took advantage of Shonkan's weak interim government to force his resignation. He went ahead to proclaim his unrelenting commitment to the success of ECOMOG in Liberia. At the end of the ECOWAS summit on the 27th of July 1996, Ghana's Jerry Rawlings was replaced as ECOWAS chairman by Nigeria's General Sani Abacha. This appointment would mark a significant milestone in the peacekeeping mission. From the 26th to the 27th of July, ECOWAS heads of state met in Abuja for their 19th ordinary sessions. Sub-regional leaders expressed irritation and impatience with the protracted Liberian situation, even as they committed to finding a peaceful solution to the conflict. ECOMOG's longest-serving field commander, General Mark Inyenga, was replaced with another Nigerian general, Samuel Victor Malu.
My advice to you is that the same dedication with which you worked here in Liberia I want you to redouble that dedication. One of the things I can tell you from professional experience is that the way we intend to move into Sierra Leone, nobody is going to dare fire on us. We are moving in the strength that the junta in Sierra Leone will not dare to challenge us.
His reputation was that of a tough soldier in the mold of former commander, Joshua Dogan Yaro. At the meeting, a series of recommendations were propagated to the ECOWAS authority, among other things, that disarmament should precede elections, that ECOWAS member states should report breaches of the arms embargo, and that the status of forces agreement should increase ECOMOG's powers to operate effectively. Meanwhile, General Malu was acquiring a reputation for his ruthless dynamism.
Good morning, sir.
Morning. Well done job. Thank you very much.
He managed to win almost universal respect among Liberians, West Africans, and members of the international community, and the Liberians nicknamed him the strong man of Liberia.
We believe we are having a good time with our soldiers around here. Yes. You want us to leave them here, or we want them to grow?
Leave them here.
The way you have operated, the type of missions you have carried out at the risk to your lives, because I understand some of the missions you have carried out even without ammunition or arms to protect yourselves. Because of your commitment, I think you deserve my highest commendation.
He won the crucial respect of the warlords. Even Charles Taylor praised him publicly for his astute handling of the ECOWAS mandate. General Malu's strategy for creating a secure environment for elections was to ensure security in Monrovia, where at least half of Liberia's population lived, to increase gradually ECOMOG's presence in the countryside, and to disarm factions while simultaneously conducting random cordon and search raids for arms and arms cache. He left no doubt about his seriousness, warning that any fighter found in possession of weapons after the official end of disarmament would be treated like a common criminal. By February, 24,500 of the estimated 33,000 fighters had been disarmed and demobilized. Liberia took long to reach this stage, and it was the forceful intervention of ECOMOG under its energetic commander General Victor Malu that exerted the local pressure that caused reluctant fighters to hand in the weapons that had been for so long essential to their own survival and credibility. Nigeria provided vehicles for the election commissioners and sent some of its own helicopters to Liberia. ECOWAS members were levied a minimum of $100,000 to help pay for the election in a bid to raise $1.5 million on top of the $5.4 million earlier approved. The campaign started on the 16th of June 1997 with 13 political parties competing. No major acts of violence or intimidation were reported, and all parties were able to travel freely and to open offices throughout the country. On the 19th of July 1997, Liberian voters cast their ballots as ECOMOG soldiers provided security at the 1,864 voting stations. On the eve of the election, Malu put on a show of military strength in Monrovia, with ECOMOG tanks and armored cars patrolling the streets and fighter jets flying overhead.
Finally, our friends in the international community, the United Nations, the OAU and ECOWAS, the United States, the European Union, and other friendly governments throughout the world, to the current chairman of ECOWAS, General Sani Abacha, and all his predecessors, to ECOMOG, and his very strong force commander, General Victor Malu, to the chairman and members, the Election Commission, we all say a big thank you.
Final results were announced on the 24th of July, with Charles Taylor scoring a stunning landslide victory. Many Liberians believed that if Taylor lost the election, the country would return to war. The genuine fear that Taylor would resort to bullets if ballots failed was a significant factor in propelling him to victory, something many Liberians openly admitted. On the 27th of August 1997, Charles Taylor was inaugurated as Liberia's 21st president. He had finally won the prize that eluded him for 7 years. But he faced a daunting task: Taylor inherited an empty national treasury with a domestic debt of $200 million and an external debt of $3 billion. Taylor praised ECOWAS and ECOMOG for their effort in bringing peace to Liberia. It's rather ironic that 3 Nigerian jets flew overhead as part of the inauguration ceremonies, jets that had earlier been used to bomb Charles Taylor to the negotiation table. It was a fitting end to the final diplomatic banquet for Liberia's most lavish warlord. The story of ECOMOG's intervention in Liberia is one that should never be forgotten. In a time when the world turned their backs on a people in their time of distress, it was the effort of the ECOWAS sub-regional leaders that came to their rescue even at great loss and sacrifices. The true heroes of the ECOMOG operations in Liberia were the soldiers on the front lines, in the streets of Liberia, and in the dark alleys of Monrovia, fighting armed bandits and hoodlums who had no qualms about taking innocent lives. They witnessed, firsthand, the macabre part of a war fought with brutal and indiscriminate intensity. Some did not survive. Some who survived are scarred physically and emotionally by horrors they experienced and witnessed. In the words of Anthony Swofford, a retired United States Marine and author, he said, "The men who go to war and live are spared for the single purpose of spreading bad news when they return. The bad news about the way war is fought and why, and by whom, and the more men who survive the war, the higher the number of men who might speak." In conclusion, we salute the bravery and the sacrifices of the men and women of ECOMOG who put their lives on the line to bring peace to Liberia. It is our hope that African countries will learn from the Liberian experience, the futility of attempting to resolve political differences through violence.